Good afternoon. Welcome to MSO's third webinar of 2024, Combating Insurance Fraud, the Fraud World We Live in, presented by Evo Riguzzi from Optima SIU. I am Sue Quimby, Senior Vice President of Media, Product Development, Client Relations, and the National School Director. As a reminder, all attendees will be muted. If you have questions or concerns, please enter them in the chat or Q&A window. We would like to thank our generous sponsors shown on the screen. They help us provide these quality educational webinars, seminar, and golf outing. Annual and event sponsorships are always available. Contact us for information. MSO is pleased to offer at least 8 webinars per year. We welcome suggestions for presenters and topics. This webinar is approved for one continuing education credit in multiple states. Please enter your national producer number, license number, and state in the chat if you need continuing education. You must be logged in individually to get credit, and you must answer all polling questions. If you missed any previous webinars, they are available for on-demand viewing on our website, www.msonet.com. They will also be available on our new YouTube channel in the future at the Mutual Service Office. This year's Ed Seminar will be held on November 12th and 13th. 2 one-hour sessions will be held each day. Topics are agritourism, claims trends, artificial intelligence, and ensuring your online business. The Ed seminars are free to all. As part of our nationwide school expansion, CE credits will be filed in multiple states upon request. You may have seen our training flyer. MSO offers CE and non-CE training for member companies, agents, and other industry members. In 2024, our goal is to be licensed as a school in 50 states. Contact us for more information. About our webinar, Evo Riguzzi is no stranger to any of the MSO people and our companies. He has professional experience in virtually every aspect of law enforcement. He owns and is president of investigations for Optima SIU, a national insurance fraud investigation company. They provide a variety of special investigation unit services, including compliance, training, and seminars. He began his impressive career in 1968 when he was commissioned in the U.S. Army as a military police officer. And thank you for your service, Evo. My nephew just started his army training. He just became a ranger.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm very, very proud. After leaving active duty, his civilian criminal law enforcement duties began when he became employed with the Internal Revenue's Elite Internal Security Division as an inspector. While there, he handled several major investigations, including corruption of Internal Revenue Service employees. Among his other accomplishments, Evo was awarded the Legion of Merit and the Bronze Star. He has provided anti-fraud technical advice to AXO, a servicing organization for commercial fleet policies. He earned his degree in sociology from Gannon College. He attended a variety of military police courses, and he graduated from the highly acclaimed U.S. Army's War College. He is a past vice president for the Insurance Security Association, and he served as chairman of the Insurance Fraud Committee for the American Society for Industrial Security. Pretty impressive, right? Today, we're going to be talking about insurance fraud, which is a major concern, costs the insurance industry millions of dollars each year. These result in increased premiums to everyone who purchases insurance. You will learn about the types of insurance fraud and methods that can be used to combat the problem, including the use of AI, which is now becoming more prevalent. Evo welcomes your questions on the presentation. Please enter them in the chat or Q&A. Evo, take it away.
Thank you for that great introduction. It's been a long career. I've done a lot of stuff in law enforcement and investigations. And of course, I think the one thing that we've seen over time is change. And change that in many instances has always been for the good. And then the bad guys figure out a way to manipulate it into their arena. And I think that's why we have, I think, quite an attendance here today. But just mentioning the word AI. I'm not an expert in it. I don't profess to be. I don't know that anybody really is except those who created it. But it's to me, it seems like they've created it and then warned us about it. What was the last big change that happened? I know in probably our lives with that, and that was probably the atomic bomb. Now, I haven't had the chance of watching the movie Oppenheimer, but I've done enough reading in it to know that those who were involved and spies who turned the formula for making that over to the Soviets all knew that they were making something that was going to alter the world, and thought by turning it over to the Soviets that that would stop it from happening. And I think if I draw that analogy, we know where we're at, that we've gotten into a point called mutual assured destruction, that nobody would possibly use an atomic bomb. That I know that's way off the topic of fraud and AI, but it seems to be, to me, analogous to that whole situation. You know, the so-called Pandora's box, or the cat out of the bag, whatever term you want to use. We're just not sure where it's going to take us. Okay, let's see if we can get this to move to the next screen. Okay, so I want to just start out by laying a, kind of a groundwork as to the kinds of fraud that I see. I've worked for an insurance company, I've worked for a third-party administrator, and now I work for an outside vendor. And your role in those, in that piece and doing this work has kind of changed. It's very difficult for me as a vendor to get mad at my clients when they, if you will, stub their toe and don't do something that they should have done. So, while it's not up on the screen, I mean, the biggest thing that you have as a responsibility in this industry is that if it doesn't seem right, say something, check it, dig into it. Yeah, it might take you down a rabbit hole. I understand that, and it might not be helping your production line. But when I see claims and underwriting errors that could have been caught just with one more step, and believe me, that mitigates against my own business, because if you're stopping it, I'm more than likely I'm not going to see it to investigate it. But that's the way it has to work. We have to work in a kind of an altruistic sense here if we're going to beat the bad guys. Because believe me, they get up every morning like you get up every morning, and they're figuring out how to screw you over, and you're trying to figure out how to comply with the regulations. Two different sets of focuses when you start your work. So we see all these kinds of frauds in these lines of business. The biggest piece, frankly, is on the medical side, because that's where there's just so many variables in this business. Now, I don't know if any of you that are attending, I don't think so from looking over the attendance list, are in the healthcare world, but it's brutal in there in the amount of fraud that's committed. And it's committed against the federal government. In my mind, if you're not afraid to go after the FBI, then, how hard is it to go against Optima? I mean, compared to the FBI, we have no tools. The FBI or the Treasury, anybody in the Treasury Department or the HHS, I mean, they have the ability to go get a subpoena by just walking into court. It doesn't cost them a dime. We have to kind of ask for information and find a way around to get that information. But every one of these lines of business that I've put up and the kinds of things that we have seen perpetrate have been going on for years. The state of California always asks us to identify new trends. Well, after doing this work for well over 40 years, the trends of what's being stolen aren't different. It's the methodology that we see that does change over time. Remember when the internet came in? We didn't know what it was going to do. Look at all the great stuff it's done, but think about how many times it's been used to steal money from people. And now, hackers just are out there like crazy. So I want to start with the AI stuff. Again, I'm not an expert. This past weekend, 2 programs carried stories on AI. One was 60 Minutes, excuse me. And the other one was Nova. Now, I don't know if you had a chance to watch any of them. The Nova program mentioned the word fraud once. It was more about the great stuff that's going to happen in the medical field. And that's good for all of us. I mean, when you see how they're using AI to do early detection, even before the humans are able to do, it's fantastic. But I think a lot of you are possibly nervous. Why? Because we don't know. And when we don't know something, obviously it raises up the anxiety level in us on how is this going to be used, or how is it going to be used against us. I'm hoping also for some of you that are in this, if you're underwriters or in business development, that you'll see that AI has some positive stuff that can help you in the process of developing business. And I think also on the reinsurance side, it will perhaps provide much better predictability. I mean, what kind of business is insurance? It's risk and predictability, and we're hoping that the predictability aspect of it, helps us prevent, detect, or possibly even drive out new lines of business or new areas where lines of business can be sold. So the way I'm looking at AI is it's an ability to counterfeit. Well, ever since I think the first written document was made, people have figured out a way to counterfeit it. If you ever watch those films that go back to either Roman days or monarch history in England, you'll see that they write their letter out on a piece of parchment, they roll it up, and they put a big wax stamp on it, and they put a seal on it. Well, that was only good until they bribed the guy making the seal. So counterfeiting has been going on forever. And when I first started in this business, it was generally you were dealing with a real piece of paper and it had whiteout on it. So the idea that you could get a counterfeit document was a little easier detected. And what people did in those days was they would photocopy that document until the whiteout kind of blended out in the background. So it was easy. Counterfeit checks. I started one of the first cases I did with the home insurance company was an agent who was getting a commission check for $480 or something like that on personal lines policies, and he put an extra 4 in there, and of course it was to the left. So his check went from $480 to $4,480. Counterfeiting, altering the documents, easy to detect. We were able to get a typewriter to match the key. An easy way to do it. Well, we moved to the digital world, and that makes counterfeiting more difficult. So what was the answer? Well, metadata. Metadata on photographs, metadata on photographs that were sent to you. But the bad guys know that if they take that photo and they print it and then make it an attachment, guess what? There's no metadata. You can see the date, maybe when the document was created, but it doesn't mean that the photograph, was true to the event. And I think that's one of the areas where the bad guys can now invent accidents with co-conspirators and make the front of their car look like in the back of another car, or the sides, whatever area they want to impact, to make it look like it's really worse than what it is. And how do we defeat that? I've seen many claims come in where the adjuster reports that the cars were repaired before they had time to inspect them. So it kind of handcuffs the adjuster. Now, the fact is that there's generally a greater conspiracy going on to make that happen. And how is that onion peeled? Sometimes somebody will tell you something. Sometimes the photographs are revealing not to be accurate. Again, when I started with the home insurance company, there was a large case going on with assigned risk auto in the state of New York, where cars were being insured in multiple carriers simultaneously. There was no way to detect that in those days. And they would file the same claim with 4 or 5 companies. I happen to have a guy on my staff who was an expert on Cadillacs, loved them, knew them inside and out and backward. And he could tell from the picture of the front end of the Cadillac that the grille didn't belong on that year's model. So again, the expertise that you have or may have to buy to help you verify the information is truly critical. But phony has been around since the original. I was watching, I happen to like watching the story where they're looking for gold on Oak Island in Nova Scotia. And in the process of doing it, what did I learn? I learned that coins were initially stamped with somebody's picture on it and maybe an inscription. And what had to be added to it to stop the counterfeiting, what's called milling. So if you look at a quarter in your pocket, and I know a lot of people don't carry money around with them anymore, but if you look at a quarter, you'll notice that there are little ridges all the way around the outside of the coin. Why is that there? It's there to prevent counterfeiting. Okay, so we take countermeasures, but it's because we've probably been stolen from beforehand to make that happen. The question becomes is what can you do to make sure that the documents, information, data, photographs, whatever it is you're receiving in your particular job function is a true document and real. So that takes extra verification. Now, one of the things that for me, I do these two presentations. I know this is being recorded here. And in that process, I've put also several vignettes on LinkedIn on fraud awareness and different issues, especially during COVID, because we were worried about false claims coming in. Well, my voice has been recorded over and over again on many different venues. I happen to do financial work with a particular transaction that my voice is in effect my password. Trust me, I'm concerned because somebody could take my voice and copy it and put it into any particular mode they want using just several words. That's one of the problems with using voice recognition software. Yet I know some companies have, especially more on the health side of the house, have moved to that avenue. There are ways to counter it. There is a company called Pindrop, and I don't have their name up on the slides here, but you can, if you're in that line of work and you need to get extra security on your systems, you may want to research Pindrop and the different services that they offer. And it has a lot to do with voice recognition, not only being used, but then using other methods to verify. So I've been pressing my brain, where can we see ways that AI can work against us? Now, again, using the internet to our advantage is kind of like AI. Maybe it's AI doing baby steps, but it's doing AI. So we had a particular case presented to us where a company decided to underwrite homeowners business in about, I don't know, 13 or 15 different states. And in the process of coming up with the idea to underwrite this business, they were going to give a gift card back through their system. And it was kind of automated. So what happens, what they did was they created a web page and you could go in and buy insurance. And what we found was that these, so I don't know how many there were because we never were able to get down that far. They were able to erase their any tracks that they had. But they were able to go in and insure your house. Take your house. You know, that information is public information. If you own a house or a condo or a co-op, you're registered as an owner in that particular piece of property. And the taxes that you pay on that property is public information. So we have a lot of information about the house, the location, whether there's a mortgage on it, because you can find that, it's public record, and perhaps what the value of the house is. And they were able to go in and just assume the identity of anybody that owned the house. They in effect registered this to buy a policy. Where the underwriters missed the beat was at the time of asking to buy the policy, there was no way for them to accept a premium payment. It would be billed out. Well, in effect, the cart got ahead of the horse, and they insured this houses in, I think it was 13 different states for 225 times, and they got paid 225 times. before somebody finally figured out something's not right here and shut down the system. Now, was there AI here? Yeah, again, baby step AI, but just by using individually initiated queries into the system. And that, in effect, somebody has to ask the system to search for whatever to get it going. So it's still human intervention to start with. I know that the thought process is that the AI computers will get so smart that they won't need us to ask the question. And that's it's a whole other discussion way above my pay grade. But again, when you start thinking about how you're going to do business and using the internet, and that's a way that things are going, the generations coming up, they're not interested in seeing U.S. postage mail dropped in their mailbox. They're not interested in carrying cash. Everything is done in a digital way. Why? Because of the speed of the transaction and the easy to record it, and you get an automatic receipt. So if you're using this, and your systems engineers are working on this stuff, you have to think of fraud as you prepare, how you're going to do business in the future. And you have to know, I mean, it's part of it. You have to know that searching capabilities are greatly being enhanced. So I think the biggest concern is that a person is being cloned in many ways. Can somebody be cloned in effect and then try and get money out of your company? Depending on what you do, how you do it, is it possible? And I always think anything is possible here. All you need to do is in effect, somebody not really pay attention. You have to have standard procedures to get identifying information. I mean, I don't know how many things that I do today that I have to get a second code and type it in, in there. So that brings us to the cell phone world. How many of you on your cell phones have it so that you have to re-enter your passcode, say after a minute or after an hour? Now, I happen to have, like, I got a new phone last year, and it automatically does everything on facial recognition, which is good. And will stop a lot of the, anybody stealing my passcode. My concern is, and I have a friend of mine constantly, almost every minute, if she has to go into the phone, has to type in that passcode. Well, the bad guys are watching for that. They sit off. If you're at a restaurant and you got somebody that's constantly doing it, person sitting next to you, left or right, can memorize that passcode in a heartbeat. And then they just come by and steal your phone, and then they got the passcode. Right? You're not going to chase after them for the phone. And how long would it take for them to get the keys to your kingdom? So when you start using passcodes on your phone, just be wary that that can happen. We're more open with that than when you go get money out of an ATM and then, they got a shroud around that. So, your 4-digit code can't be copied. But again, make sure that you have procedures to identify whom you're dealing with. And it could be not necessarily the claimant, but a vendor of the claimant, like a medical facility that says, we've got bills, or I sent you bills, and they're really intercepting between you and the real medical providing facility. Again, all of this stuff can be fooled. It requires just a different mindset that business is not business as usual. How do I, again, taking the other side of the coin, how do I see the insurance industry using AI? I sense right off the bat, most likely in underwriting. Again, can be in markets and identifying risks and using data to try and mitigate those risks. What has happened in a particular area? You can survey this stuff today almost automatically. I know that ChatGPT is out there. I have a daughter that works in real estate. She loves it because she doesn't have to figure out new ways to say the same thing on a particular piece of property. That's great. We can't use it in our SIU operation. Why? Because we have personal data. And I'm not going to turn over to a machine somebody's personal data that I have no idea where it's going to end up. So we can't use such a thing. I know that a lot of folks, especially folks in the claims operation, not that as well as the underwriting. Underwriting, obviously, you have your contracts already, legalistically perfect, and all you're doing is basically signing A and putting a name in B and the date of of effect of the policy. But I think part of it can be again doing risk assessments and doing probability studies. That's all out there. The data is there. It's a matter of how you're able to pull it together and figure out perhaps maybe a market that you want to see that's out there. Maybe you want to move into, say, North Carolina, where we're seeing growth, you'll see a newspaper article to it, but you need to know what's happening in a particular location or locale, what kind of weather, what other things that are impacting it. Now, again, here's where I get nervous. If you're searching for data, whose data are you getting? Folks, we know that data can be interpreted different ways. And if somebody fails to put the right data in, what are we getting back? Whose data is it? And if I draw you back to what's been in the press lately about the number of medical dissertations that have been presented, where now, as they're searching it out, they're finding that data was either copied or manipulated to come to the right result. And it's interesting because as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking, I happen to have to audit a particular entity's financial records, and the report at the beginning and the report at the end had all the right numbers, but everything in between didn't make sense. And when I went back to the person who prepared the document, his answer was, well, I got to make the numbers work. And so you can't make the numbers work. The numbers got to be what they are, and whatever the net result of plus and minuses comes out to be, that's the answer, right? We don't give the answer and then try and figure out the equation in between. So be careful of where you're getting your data. Be careful of who is giving you that data and how it affects what your outcomes are going to be. The internet is a wonderful, wonderful tool. I mean, the cost of business for me has gone down dramatically because I'm getting rid of postage machine. It's nothing more than a paperweight now in my office. Could hardly mail anything. Even photocopying, and it's almost passé in doing anything. So you can always just take a document and put it to a PDF. And by the way, there was a day when PDFs couldn't be altered, and they can be altered obviously today. So you have to look at everything and see if it's right. There's no easy way out. So the underlying piece is that people cheat, lie, and they steal. It's just human nature. If there aren't moral values to prevent you from doing stuff, and I'm not a moralist, I'm just an observationist of what goes on here. But if the moral structure has broken down, and I think in our country, not that it was great before, but it hasn't gotten better, that's for sure. So this was a survey done of teenagers. And they know that they're cheating and they're using their phones. So I don't know if any of you have high school era kids, age kids rather. Some of the schools are pulling these away, the phones. They can't have them. Not allowed to bring them to class. I know it's been a difficulty with not allowing them to have them at all, because the whole need of connecting with somebody to make sure they're okay seems to override the chance of using the phone for cheating. The other thing is that COVID clearly enhanced this whole process. Kids were sitting home and certainly weren't doing a lot of the work that they were supposed to be and could get the phones to give them the answers. So that's just pushed it through. And as far as they were concerned, hey, I'm just solving the requirement. I'm not worried about cheating. in effect, they're not really worried about learning either, but it's there and cheating doesn't stop it at the end of graduation. Now, I will tell you again, from an observation point of view, in the last 2 years plus, my workload, without really increasing with our any significant clients, has gone up 30%. And so I'm saying, what's going on? Why are we suddenly getting a lot of this business? Well, it could be growth from an individual carrier, which, yes, we're seeing. But one of the issues that bothers me in this, and I think is part of the cause, is every night on TV, just about, some news station is going to show you a smash and grab, and the persons get away with it. In New York City, you had 2 cops that were beat up. And basically, the guys that beat up the cops got away with it. Usually, you beat up a cop, you're going in. You're gonna spend time behind bars. With the lack of prosecution for physically or physical type crimes and property crimes of stealing, what do you got to lose from stealing from your insurance company? Nothing. You got nothing to lose because the prosecution side of the house is really low. The only state that I see people getting prosecuted for really low-level type insurance fraud. I got a newsletter from Iowa. Iowa. None of us are in Iowa that I know of. When you're in any of the major metropolitan areas, whether it's New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Pittsburgh, Miami, Los Angeles, these crimes are going basically unpunished, and insurance fraud drops to the bottom of the barrel. The other piece that you have to know is that those fraud bureaus are swamped. They get hit with literally thousands of referrals a year, and they only can take so many with manpower. So who's fighting this? It's you and me. We have to fight this problem, and you have to check. You have to make sure that what you have in the way of information is accurate, correct. If it doesn't match up to what you think it should be, then you've got to question it. So these are big numbers. They're beyond our comprehension. The Powerball paid out $1 billion, I think the other day, 1.3. It's nothing compared to what people are stealing. So in our line of work, if you're in the property casualty world, it's $34 billion. For those of us in this audience that pay for your Medicare, with that deduction on your tax return or on your weekly paycheck, this is where your money's going, $80 billion. That number hasn't changed in I think, 15 years. The people are stealing from Medicare. What one of your companies could withstand, 1/100th of that as a loss and still survive? You can't. Only the government can put up with this. And it actually is an encouragement for somebody else to try and steal. That's why on the medical billing, it's the higher area. If I categorize what we look at a lot, it's on medical fraud, slip and falls, staged losses, staged claims that just don't add up. It's circumstances that aren't true. And this is what you're faced with. Okay. And I've gone back in to search the different entities that produce these statistics. There's not a lot new out there. So it tells me it is what it is. You go after the insurer, why not? So here I'm a resident of Florida. I don't know if any of you do business down here. They did announce that they brought 8 new companies into the state, that they're taking policies out of citizens, which I hope is good. Because having to buy insurance, I end up having to, buy from citizens. But the insurance costs down here have gone through the roof, and of course the insurers are blaming it on the reinsurers to get it in here. But it's a lot of combination of different things, including bad laws, and they're trying to straighten it out. Well, what happens is when that claim comes in and that person's been paying 30% greater premium, and they're going to want some of that money back. It's just the way it is. That's in their mind. So the deal is that if you're in this particular locale, you have to be a little more attentive to what goes on. I know that, from a PIP, personal injury protection or no fault insurance, that work for us has just about become non-existent because a lot of those claims are under $10,000, and it actually almost doesn't pay for us to go out and do an investigation. And unfortunately, that contributes to the ability for people to keep trying. And I understand it's a business decision. I'm not critical of it. I'm not shilling for the work. Believe me, it's just the way it is. So you have to be able to fight this for your company. I mean, I've worked for two companies that became insolvent, so I understand business companies can go out of business. You have to be able to fight here, push back, work with the adjusters to work towards mitigation. And by the way, that's the other thing that I'm thinking. Now, I know we might have a fair amount of mutual participation in here, which is a little different than some of the stock companies. But what I'm seeing is that the non-mutual companies are having high turnover, and that just doesn't help to fight back, because I'm seeing that some of the new folks coming in don't know what to do with the information that we do present them. You can mitigate, you can ask. As long as you're moving towards paying that claim under the Fair Claims Practices Act and meet the timeframes, you have the right to continue to ask the questions until you're satisfied you have the best answer available. And again, that may end up still you paying the claim at the full amount. I believe me, I understand that. So I like to show this video because we always think of staged events as one car hitting the other. And the reason why I like this video is it has to do with general liability. Now, there's a guy walking down with a cap on his head, and he's got what looks to be like a Palmolive soap bottle. And it's very hard to see what he's doing, but he's actually squirting water up on the ceiling above. All right, now he's a tenant. The landlord put the camera in, and he was having problems with this tenant to begin with. This was a smart move on the part of the landlord, but there this guy is spraying, creating a puddle on the floor. So why would you do that, right, folks? Why would you do that? So come on, next slide. There we go. Now he sends out his roommate with the camera to take photographs of the water on the floor. Right? Not report it to somebody, not tell somebody there's a hazard that needs to be fixed, not even throwing something down to prevent some innocent person from going by. And there he is videotaping it. Now, if this guy ever slipped down the stairs with that toothbrush in his mouth, well, So this is a staged event. It happens even in property like this. So the GL claim, this whole claim got tossed out. We did a referral to the state. Because no money was paid out, the state wouldn't take and move forward with it. Okay. Again, just looking over some of the stuff that we see. So here we have just case study, right? And basically this woman said she slipped and fell out of her apartment on the ice and she broke 3 bones in her ankle. Big demand, $325,000. The IA went out. He couldn't get surveillance video at the property. And at one point he was unable to retrieve the ambulance records. But the security guard had gone out there and after the accident, and the daughter was making a statement that the slip and fall happened at the local Wells Fargo bank, not at the property. So it's, again, why they would do this is beyond me. If she slipped and fell at Wells Fargo, take the claim to Wells Fargo. You're going to get paid. All right. We were able to get the ambulance notes, and we were able then to determine that the incident location was in fact at the Wells Fargo Bank. Now, again, no ding on the IA. It depends on who that individual is. Remember that your SIU, whoever you use, this is what they do. And they press. And there's no difference between, as far as I'm concerned, between what the adjuster does and what the SIU does. We're both trying to get to the truth. But for some reason, just by saying you're part of the Special Investigation Unit, it works. So folks on the underwriting side, remember that you can't write contracts with bad people. It just doesn't work. And you can search stuff out on your clue forms to find out what's happened. I understand that can help on the personal line side. The commercial side is a little harder. But look at your application and how your rating is done. And sometimes when I write this slide, I have to buy insurance, so I have to fill out the application. And sometimes I find the application a little crazy in what it's asking, because it's not really germane to my line or my size of business. So know your geography and demography. Again, here's where AI can help you, getting into what's happening in a particular area. Do you verify any information on that application? Is it just a matter of getting enough premium or getting a premium that's above what maybe your competitors are doing? But you got to figure there may be an expense on the other side, right? I mean, that's the whole idea of risk. Do you do inspections? Are you using only Google Maps? So when was the last time that satellite or that vehicle drove down that street and took those pictures? How current is it? Things happen. Do you check police records, criminal statistics in the area? And remember now that the FBI has changed how they're capturing data from previous times. So if you're comparing it to 2023 to say 2018, you're going to get different results because of the way that they're capturing that data. And some of the major cities, though, have not changed over. Again, just check your stuff. Is this the Class A building? How were you able to see what exactly it looks like? You have to know your risk. And data is out there, information is out there. So I think of this was in effect generated after Katrina. But the whole idea that nobody ever thought that the waters would come up that high. Flood is obviously becoming a greater concern. And again, as a Florida resident, you would think there's no such thing as rising seas because the building that's going on down here right against the water is unabated. Know your risk. Know where you're buying that policy for where you're selling that policy. Know what goes on in the area. I always like to use the places that can make fertilizer. Fertilizer plants basically work in effect with chemicals that make bombs. So do you know what's in that area? Again, this is West Texas where this particular plant blew up. And again, the only way I can draw your attention to the size and scope of the damage done, because it looks like somebody crushed 2 Budweiser cans on the right side. If you look to the left side of the screen, you'll see the other silos and the size of them. So you can imagine the size of the silo there. And it blew away all the backs of the houses at the top of your picture. Know where you're writing stuff. Again, we've seen this with agent and brokers, change the use of the property, the name of the property owner. They've altered deck pages to give higher limits of coverage. Again, not knowing to the carrier. Remove pages from loss runs. They've kited premium and have actually stolen premium. So know that that's still part of it. If you get like the insurance daily newspapers, there's always an article in them at least 2 or 3 times a week about some agent or broker who's been convicted. It's a common part of the business. For those of you on the claim side of the house, if you're not in a health insurance, HIPAA doesn't apply to you. HIPAA is a health insurance portability and accountability, health insurance. So auto liability, med pay, workers' comp. You don't have to accept that they want a release. Now, you may not get it without a release, but the releases are not required to get data specific to your claimant on that accident. There is a website that's available to you, and it's the frequently asked questions, and you can see that their answer is, liability insurance is not covered. Workers' comp is not in there. Auto medical pay, not covered. Again, some of the things we see, same treatments for different claimants in the same event. Lack of improvement. Doctors aren't really doctors. The clinic really isn't a clinic. And AI can generate, bills faster than a speeding bullet. Again, things that you have to look for: inconsistent statements, pat answers. They still alter documents, and once in a while, somebody's stupid enough to put white out of it. That makes us look good. And, crazy, hazy, answers. So, again, this is one of the claims. This was 42 claims that came to us after they were paid out the money, with an attempt to see what we could do to help them. And the fact is that because there was no proper claim investigation, we didn't know who the applicant that became the insured really was, because the driver's license from a Central American country was a counterfeit. They just prepared it themselves, and they presented it. They bought insurance. Within 2 to 3 weeks, the most, there's an at-fault rear end collision, and always that person from Central America always struck 3 people in the other car. There was never, in 42 accidents, 2 people in the car, 1 person in the car, 4 people in the car. It was always 3. You would think that somebody would have gotten a friggin' hint, and they didn't. And nobody indexed the claims because it cost them money to index them. So they kept it out of ISO. Had they indexed it, by the time they hit the 4th claim, I guarantee they would have figured out there was a problem. They lost $1 million in phony med pay and property damage. Use the tools that you have. Use the tools that you have. Again, with social media, we do a lot of searches. Sometimes we get lucky. A lot of times we don't. But you never know. You never know what you're going to find until you try. So the claimant's on the left claims he can't move, shoot, communicate because his back is out of whack. Well, somebody took this picture. The claimant didn't take the picture. The claimant's bride-to-be didn't take the picture. Somebody at a wedding got it and posted it and tagged them. And that's how we found it. So use social media searches. If we use a vendor, you want to go to the vendor directly, that's fine with me. Call me, I'll give it to you. Okay, next picture. We got tired of seeing him dancing. What do? We're experts. All right, again, I'm not, anybody that's in a special investigation unit or a company like mine, we all are experts in some way or another on different things. I have people that are absolutely phenomenal on commercial auto, and that's because we've done a lot of it. But the whole idea is that your SIU, or whoever you use as your SIU, is out there to help you fight fraud. You have to find the cases. You have to report those reasonable suspicions, and that's a mandatory piece in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. So know where your SIU is and get to them. Talk with them. Ask them to tell you what they're seeing. All right. Remember that I do basically the same work as an adjuster does, but it seems to put people on edge, especially if they've done prior phony claims. When we do face-to-face interviews, it's amazing what happens. We get a lot of people tell us, I'm dropping the claim. And, that's a big win when they drop that claim. We chalk that up on the board, ring the bell in the office. Remember that we can do in-depth searches. You can do them too. Usually it's the problem that the adjuster hasn't got the time to do them. And that's why it moves from their desk to our desk. We've recovered property. This year we recovered a semi-tractor, found the keys, found the vehicle, and got it back to the insured. We do work with law enforcement and the fraud bureaus. And then remember that the purpose of the SIU is to get a plan to you on how to get to the truth of what happened. again, these are some of the responsibilities that we have in states that I generally think the population of this audience are from. But you are required to take training, and sometimes in some instances, we write fraud plans and fraud manuals. Those are there to help you. I know people won't go through the fraud manuals and the fraud plans, so we do a little abbreviated thing. Your SIU can do that for you. What are the real hot things you're seeing? Keep me informed. Let me know what's happening. Again, use your experts, report your suspicions. And I really thank you for taking the time out of your very busy day to participate in this event. It's open for questions, Sue?
Yes. What
Okay.
questions do we have? I know I had a comment, another common scam when people call you up and try to get you to say yes on the telephone, and then they use that for a recording and to go somewhere else and buy something or agree to something. All right, we've got a two-part question. With so many homes and businesses now equipped with cameras, how can insurance companies use this to fight fraud? How can SIUs access such data?
Well, that boils down to the people that have those videos. So some people are willing to get involved and some people aren't. It's just about as simple as that. So one of the things that we do is we search for cameras, and if we do a neighborhood canvas to see if we can't possibly find, one of those ringtone cameras that are out there. Other people put cameras, even out around their property. It's a matter of whether they're willing to share it. So what happens? Suppose I find that we go to Sue's house and she says, no, I'm not going to give it to you. I don't want to get involved. So, well, do you have the recording? Yes. Okay, I'm going to ask you to save that, download it and save it. Then we get you, the carrier, to write them a letter telling them that you want them to save that stuff. Some people will comply, some people won't, because there's no penalty for destroying what could be evidence that they don't know their evidence. If we feel it might show something and we're working with the police, then we get the police to do that. Hey, go check if we can. In some instances, I actually had one of my, that those 42 losses. The owner of that company called me up and wanted me to know if I could get a cop in LA to go sit in front of the agent that was writing a lot of these policies to catch these people from making scams. You can kill somebody in Los Angeles and not get arrested. So, it's very, I can't work miracles. We're not miracle workers. The idea is trying to elicit, cooperation for some of these actions. And cameras have provided us, sometimes it's not the answer, but sometimes it's a clue to help get the answer. So, again, it just depends on the individual. If it's the insured or the claimant, we'll put them on notice that they had better not destroy that, because we would consider that as failing to cooperate and interfering with the proper adjudication of the claim. And again, can the adjuster then use that? That becomes the question. We can say anything we want, but we're not the ones that settle the claim.
I've got a question as regards to videos. MSO has building cameras, and we have been asked, the external cameras, to provide footage for the possible video capture of criminals whose vehicles were passing by our street. And in fact, they were able to use it. And we were willing to cooperate. And also another situation related to theft. So I think it's real, Evo, that the cameras can be very effective if somebody's willing to provide the footage.
Yeah, I know. So I kind of think I'm not living in a high crime neighborhood where I'm at right now. But in the building next door to us, there was a shooting, and the guys jumped over a wall into our property and took off. And our cameras captured their faces, which we turned over to the police, and they were able to get two, I think, of the three people involved. Again, something that had nothing to do with us in our building. It was a personal vendetta thing where they were out to kill somebody. So you never know, where it's at. Cameras are everywhere today, but just like anything else, the old days, it was 7 days worth of video. Now you get 30 days worth of data. So jumping on that right away becomes, the most important thing. So if you've hired an independent adjuster, that should be, I know you're confirming coverage, but at the same time, you better check for cameras. It should almost be simultaneous.
We have another question for you. Do you see fraud with mitigation vendors?
With mitigation vendors. Well, I'm not sure what a mitigation vendor is. In other words, like a public adjuster. Is that somebody stepping in there to try and increase the value, or, it's usually we're the ones that are doing the mitigating, trying to get it down.
Stephen, did you want
So-
to answer that, speak to that? It was your question, so.
Can't hear him.
You're muted.
I think you have to unmute him, Sue.
I can't unmute him. It says ask him to unmute, so.
I didn't ask that question.
Stephen Cadmus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Stephen Mayer?
I didn't ask that question. Maybe it was
It was-
Cadmus. This is
It was
mine.
it was Stephen Cadmus.
Stephen Meyer?
It was Stephen Cadmus who asked the question.
Okay.
But there's
Just tell me what you mean by a mitigating intermediary there, or whatever. it's called.
He doesn't have a mic. A vendor who responds to emergency service on a property claim.
Okay, so that's usually a public adjuster. And they are, well, there's a term I can't use here, but it's like flies on what, when it comes to these losses. You'll get multiple turning out. Now, so far in my life, very recently, in the building I'm in, we're having issues with some construction next door. We had to hire a public adjuster, so they're not all bad. The idea is that a lot of these guys have reputations, or gals, they have reputations. They obviously are going to boost the value to claim. You can't stop the insured or a claimant from hiring a public adjuster to represent them in the process. But you just have to put your ears up a little higher and realize that the only way that they're going to make money is to inflate that claim. So when it comes down to, unless they're on a specified fee basis, but usually it's based upon the value to claim. So what you have to do is watch and see what's submitted and go for verifications. And I've been told, and I've seen it in several claims, where a fire burned in the house, suspected arson, and then they tell you that their computer went up in the fire and they lost all their receipts. Well, that's not the answer to the whole basis. The next question should be, well, how did you buy this? Did you use credit cards? Oh, yes, but my credit card statements were destroyed in the computer. Yeah, but the credit card company, we all know, maintains those records. Did you pay the credit card company? What bank account? You can always go back and get bank statements, even if you're not part of the bank. Maybe a little hard, but you want those bank statements. In other words, you have to push it to the next level to say you want to see the proof of payment. And it's really about the only way we can press them. And again, immediately, what comes to mind, several cases. We handled work for one company was selling travel insurance. I can't tell you how many people flew to the Dominican Republic and all had bags from Hermes. I mean, it was such a consistent pattern of using and sharing receipts. The other piece is that receipts can be bought on the dark web. We know that they can be fabricated and make to look real. Then we go back to Hermes. I mean, the higher the end of the product, the more likelihood is that the vendor, the retailer, has proof of who bought it. So it's extra steps. Yeah, and every time you do that, it either costs time or it costs money. I mean, it's all part of it. So, and I know that sometimes the loss expense ratio gets squeezed, and unfortunately, then what happens is the indemnification side goes up. The indemnification side of payments is much higher than the loss expense. So sometimes you gotta bite the bullet and pay the expense, whether it's me or somebody else. You gotta drill down and show tenacity in it.
Do you see any fraud problems with some of those vendors like the, the Serve Pros and the Service Masters and the Paul Davises that are out cleaning up after losses?
Okay, yeah. It's been a long time since I've seen one of them. And some of those are independent franchise type operations. So they can sometimes boost the cost of the repair for items that didn't need to be repaired. In fact, the last time I saw that had to do with a toilet breaking in an apartment building in New York City, and it flooded down in the apartment below. And there was a claim for replacing literally, the whole sheetrock on a particular wall. Now, and if you know anything about sheetrock, it can be cut. It can be, say cut to 1 foot or 2 foot. That's how high the water got. I don't think it ever got that high. But even if the seepage and it goes up the wall, I understand all that. So you can cut it at 2 feet and replace a 2-foot sheet rather than all 4 walls worth of sheetrock, and that's what was built. So it's not that it doesn't happen; it does happen, but I only see what my clients send me. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen. We just haven't seen it. That's all. It can
I think
happen.
I think that's all the question. Go ahead.
But is really high. That's the bigger area.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Sue.
I was gonna say, I think that's all the questions we have. Jan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, first I want to say thank you to Evo and all of the participants. We had a huge crowd today for this, so Evo, you're popular. And what a timely topic. So obviously you can see Evo's connection on the screen that's up. And we just appreciate you coming on and being willing to do this for MSO. We know how important this is to our member companies and to all those who are on her, prospects. So thank you very much. And I've got to turn it back to Sue and she'll close it out.
Next month in May 23rd, we have a 2-hour flood presentation that's with CE. So if you need CE in that area, please register to participate. Thank you again, Evo. Thank you to our team who helps put these together and sends out the marketing and takes care of some of the registrations and the CE filings. So we certainly appreciate it. It takes a village to do these. So thank you for attending today and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sue.
Thanks. Okay, guys. Ciao.